us get into Q4 and kind of just where I see things are going, and more importantly, where I'm seeing the conversations going. And so let's just jump right into it. The first one, I think we've seen buyers. They're very payment sensitive, and I think we're going to get more and more into being payment sensitive. Especially, it doesn't seem like there's any end to the war in sight right now. Um, interest rates are up, interest rates are down, and so forth. And so oftentimes we are so focused on purchase price. And what can you afford in the terms of you're looking for $400,000, $450,000 home. For me, purchase price is irrelevant because we've got rate buy down programs. There's so many different creative ways, to get the payment that they want. But for me, I'm focusing. I think Q4. I think if you really want to get somewhere with buyers, you really need to dig in and dive into their payment situation, what they can afford as far as payment, whether they feel comfortable for as a monthly payment, and then from there, and to Nick's point, they've had a conversation with Justin, and now you can reverse engineer it and then decide what really is that price point. Because if I sit down with someone, I say, yeah, well, how much of a home are you looking for? 550. Well, where'd you come up with 550? Most especially new buyers have no idea where that number came from. And then with that you really kind of get into the negotiations and, like I said, the rate buy downs and the concessions.
Again, we talk about the word conversion. It's one of the worst words we can use in this industry because we have to slow this roll down to create friends and influence people. We have to be people that are helping people achieve what their objectives are. And the only way you're given that information is to just keep asking questions and make them, they'll eventually arrive at a point where they believe all of a sudden that you have their best interests at heart. And that's the agent they want to do business with. But this is something that you can start having conversations, and you're not going to be the typical agent. I can tell you that, just having these conversations about, what they really need to be able to achieve that goal. Yeah. That's the importance of this.
I just realized I didn't send you these ahead of time.
You didn't. Okay. But I love talking about quarter four. This is like business stuff. I could talk about this all day. Yeah. So this is the differentiation between an order taker and a consultant. When you have a client that says, I want to buy a $550,000 house, and you go, check, what area, how many bedrooms, bathrooms, and you start firing off listings before you start having conversations. That's the consultant side of this business. And that's where you thrive in the last quarter of the year. Why 550? Like your point, Mikey, where did you come from, Todd? Asking those questions. How much can you afford per a monthly payment at 550? What are you looking for a house at 550? Where are they? Like those questions, yes, make it maybe a harder conversation than the last agent that was like, whatever you want, I'm just going to do it. But that's how you navigate through the last part of this year.
Yeah, I think I actually, in one of the next points, I think I have order taker in there. So very well played. Well done.
Oh, okay.
All right, number two, let's talk about sellers. And this is a tough one, but sellers need reality and not reassurances. I can't, we did a 3-pack on this months ago. I know you always put the days on market. And for me, the days on market, that means nothing to me. I take if I'm looking in a neighborhood, I take a sample of that neighborhood and I'm going to go through the listing history. And what is the average days on market from when that house was finally priced properly to the close of escrow? It's not 70, 80 days. No, oftentimes that seller finds that sweet spot. And then days on market now drops to 15 and 20. And you have to show up with numbers.
Well, that's why the list price is, I'll let you finish, but that's why the list price to sale price retention is so important, because it does take that into consideration. They have the original list price to sale price, and then they have the list price to sale price. And that's at the moment the seller accepted it. And then you go back and look at the history and you can see, were they overpriced or, was it?
And oftentimes they were,
of course,
or the house looked like crap.
Yeah.
But you just were there. I mean, you'd be amazed if you take control of the dialogue, take control of the conversation and become the expert, that actually provides a lot more reassurance than rather just hoping and praying that we get what that seller wants. But we have to set realistic expectations, and we have to let, this is the hard part, you have to let the market dictate the conversation, and you have to be able to explain the market
Totally.
and back it up.
Yeah. Well, just that's exactly why we've said, NAR speaks, Lawrence Yun speaks, Redfin speaks, some other, economist speaks, Cromford Reports here in Phoenix speaks, Todd Menard speaks on the Monday and Wednesdays. None of our data matters if you're, first of all, if you're not engaging with people, and secondly, the whole purpose of this of the statistical part is so that when somebody says to you a national narrative that came out of, say, Yun's mouth, you can come to the realization and say, well, actually, that's not true here in the Greater Phoenix metropolitan market. Here's what this is. Yeah. And then at that particular point, Todd's and everybody's numbers aren't important, because the person who has the most important numbers is the agent working with that specific agent in that specific market in that particular neighborhood before they put the offer in.
And as a matter of fact, Nick, Lawrence Young, he texted me over the weekend, and he said, we're definitely in a buyer's market.
Yeah, I'm sure he said that, right? Yeah.
You're definitely going to run into those individuals who
wait.
know who economists are, but I'm going to guess that most of the conversation isn't going to be what the economists are saying. It's going to be, hey, John down the street sold his house in 2021 for X amount of money. And so I promise everybody, I'm going to have a new book here in 2 weeks. So I'm going to stop. Well, I'm not going to stop talking about it. Never split the difference. You need to be having these hard conversations up front. So we're talking about quarter four. We're talking about the last part of the year. Last part of the year is one of the tighter parts of the year because of holidays. People want to stop doing stuff. This is the time of year that you need to look at what you're investing your time into. If you have a seller or a client that wants to hire you and you are not going to see eye to eye, you are not going to be on the same page on price or other things about that house, cut them loose. Let your time and your energies be focused on clients that are going to want to work with you, not against you.
All right. And motivation matters. You have to know why people want to transact. And I think sometimes this is the area that we make a lot of assumptions. An initial question, hey, Todd, why are you and Lynn looking to buy? Your answer is probably not the true motivation. And I think we talked about this last week.
Did.
You have to come from that place of curiosity, of really digging deep. Because once I've identified, and I like to, even though I try not to be negative, well, I am negative. What am I talking about?
Not usually.
Yeah. But I try not to be so negative on this, but your motivations to me are problems, and my job is to solve the problems. And the more questions and the deeper that I dig, the more that I can be that problem solvers. And then to Nick, to your point, I think for Q4, focus on being the advisor rather than the order taker. We go to the restaurant, and you got a server just taking your orders. That's great. But then you got the server that's explaining things and giving the recommendations and asking. Yes.
See the difference.
You should take me.
Well, someday maybe I will. Motivation is important. Obviously, it's the why behind most things. And again, that's so you got emotional and you got logistic, and the people are going to always act on emotional. It's just, that's what's going to happen. They may need certain things, but they're going to act on the emotional part. But again, I just go back to that same perspective continuously of, ask a lot of questions. What are your concerns? Don't just talk about the pretty stuff, or the happy part. What are your worries? What are your concerns? Why do you have that concern? You gotta basically, if it's like, I want a big backyard. And this is so trivial in comparison to really what we're talking about. But here's the thing. I want a large backyard. Okay, well, could you explain to me what a large backyard looks like to you? Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. Great. Well, what size yard would maybe not work for you? Eventually what's going to happen is in the same thing in finance. And Mike, you said this years ago when interest rates really were a problem. I mean, people were not engaging just because the interest rate at that day said it was too high and they were used to the 2.5 and 3.5. The point was, what's your worry about the interest rate? And why are you worried about that? What's the lowest the interest rate would have to be for you to engage today? I remembered you said those things. I think everybody else did. Those are the kinds of questions that when you dig deep, you get the truth. You get the real underlying non-facade conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the backyard analogy is perfect here. You start with emotion when you're looking to purchase, just what it is. Yes, there's a need there, but that desire to want to have something definitely takes over. I want a big backyard. Oh, that's fantastic. What does a big backyard mean to you, look like to you? We use emotions as descriptors, but emotions are relative. Big to me could be a lot different to Mike.
I want my
No
next
joke.
house to be updated.
Yeah, correct.
What
Yeah.
does that mean?
Yeah, I want to have Wi-Fi. So you have to ask those questions to clarify what they mean. And the better that you are at asking those questions and then stop talking, the better you are to control or at least subjugate that emotion to the second priority. And then the real thing is what they're trying to do. What is that motivation?
And speaking of Q4, my favorite time of year to sell a home is
Christmas.
Yep, the weekend between
Between
Christmas and New Year's. I sell more homes if my wife doesn't, if I'm in town. Everybody is jovial.
Yep.
Nobody is out shopping. Sellers are they're jovial. They're willing to make deals, and that's
Yeah,
my
but-
favorite week of the year. So I told my team last Wednesday. I said my goal this year, I'm going to sell between 2 and 3 between Christmas and New Year. So get under
There's
contract.
so many benefits of working
Yeah.
Q4. Every other agent's like, oh, Thanksgiving's in 3 weeks. Okay, so they just kind of start disengaging, right? And then after Thanksgiving, it's like somebody turned a light switch off. It's like half the agents disappear. That's the best time to get the best placement in marketplaces, to get your best dollar per click. It's the best time to get all those different things. But more importantly, you got a fraction of a competition. And yes, you have fewer people in the marketplace, but can you imagine, why would you choose the most complicated time of the market to really do business unless you had a reason?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Christmas Eve is Nick's day to shine. So the week after Christmas, you're pretty wiped out and resting.
Is
huh?
Christmas Eve my day to shine?
Well, it's Santa's day to shine.
Yeah,
but
no,
you're working
so
pretty
am
hard
I now?
too.
Am I Santa now? Is that what we're saying?
You just got elevated. You got a promotion. Yeah.
All righty. Appreciate it, guys. All right.